You've heard about goblins, but have you heard of the fairy dog? Every DM has been there, or maybe it's just me. You finally found a date for your next session, but you have no idea what to throw at them. You want to surprise them with something new and interesting, but they've read the monster manual and they know all about trolls and their weakness to fire. That's when I turned to Folklore. Folklore and stories have always been one of my big loves, well before I started playing D&D. And over the years, I've collected a bunch of cool legends and folkloric stories. Whenever I'm unsure what to do for my next D&D session, I realize that I don't have to make everything up from scratch. There's a treasure of stories out there that my players have never heard about. People are gonna notice when you base your next session of Twilight and you have all these vampires riding around in SUVs, but obscure folklore is totally new to most people. I find it especially useful when I'm playing a Feywild campaign, but I can assure you that it works in any setting. There's so much out there, so usually I look for something specific, things that are easy to turn into an encounter. It should be a creature that's not already in the monster manual and maybe has some kind of puzzle combat aspect to it. Because you know something that always happens in folklore but I don't incorporate enough in my D&D sessions? It's a reward and a weakness. Something like, this monster can't see you when you walk backwards, but its horn cures bad breath. I'd love to incorporate that kind of stuff more. When researching, I mostly look at European folklore because that is what I feel most knowledgeable about, and in that way I can make sure that I'm not appropriating some kind of culture that I don't know enough about. Welcome to my cozy corner, where I'm gonna tell you the stories that I found out about. I used the Gutenberg project, which is a really nice website full of public domain books, and it has a bunch of old books that you would otherwise not find easily. There's also a book of creatures, which is a really fun website. It has some really nice illustrations and easy to read descriptions. Then I also found a book at my local library that has a lot of very local Belgian legends, and they were very unique, so let me tell you about them. The first one I found is the Flabbacht, which is a Belgian legend, thus the weird name. We're gonna have a few more weird names in this one, so strap in. This is a red spirit who drowns people when they curse. Not sure why I couldn't find a lot of information on this one, just that it really hates people who curse or who gossip. I don't imagine like an epic fight with this one, but I thought it could be like a fun encounter with your D&D party if they have a bad mouth, to just throw this at them and roleplay it out. The next one is a bit more epic. It's called the Hazel Worm. Doesn't sound super epic, but he's the king of snakes. On Midsummer, you can go out and look for him, because he only appears once a year, and he wears a little crown, which is super cute. Unless it's a huge snake. Then it's kind of terrifying. Okay, it's pretty terrifying. If you manage to steal this crown, you'll gain incredible wisdom. But of course, everything comes at a cost, and if you steal his crown, you'll also be plagued by snakes everywhere. You know what this sounds like to me? It sounds like a cool quest to find a magic item, beat the monster, but then there's also a curse. Okay, these were some of the funny ones I found, but let me tell you about the ones that I'm actually gonna use. The fairy dog sounds cute, but there's actually really terrifying stories about it. I particularly chose this one because I don't think there's enough fey creatures in the monster manual, and I like playing Feywild campaigns, so that's why I added this one. It's a creature kept by fairies. It kind of looks like a dog, but just huge, terrifying, and it has a braided tail. I would think like somewhere between a wolf and a horse and a hump of grass is kind of how they explain it. This creature is usually kept by the Fae to protect them from people who seek to harm them. People recognize it by their barks. If they heard 2 barks in the distance, they knew it was time to run. Because if you heard the bark a 3rd time, you'd be overtaken and never be seen again. Even though people were incredibly scared of them, if you managed to find one of its teeth in like your pumpkin patch, you'd be really lucky. Fairy dog teeth were usually passed through the generations because they were lucky talisman that managed to cure most diseases. Then there's a Voivre, which is basically a French type of dragon, but what's special about this one is that it has a gem instead of an eye. Also, it's permanently on fire, which pretty cool. In the story that I found, it often bathes and then it takes out its gem. This is when it's at its weakest, and this is when most knights in the stories manage to steal it, and this eye brings them many riches and happiness. Whatever that means. I like how this one has a treasure but also a weakness. Yeah, that really inspires me. Lastly, I found out about the Agrippa, which I think is also a French legend. It's a living grimoire a human-sized book, basically. It's full of knowledge about demons and devils, and it's usually kept by priests in monasteries, chained to the floor, so that no one finds out the secrets of the dark arts. So now that I've chosen 3 favorites, I'm gonna turn them into encounters. And maybe a miniature as well. That could be fun, right? From the info I found online, I started filtering the things that I can turn into 5e rules. The Wavre, or French Wyvern, had the gem eyes, so that should definitely be the reward for defeating it. I used the dragon's stat block as a starting off point and made its gem into its most powerful weapon. In this way, you can make it less dangerous by stealing its gem first or destroying it. In the stories, it's pretty vague what the valuable gem actually does, so I wrote a little description where it upgrades the worth of coins, so your party would want to make sure it doesn't destroy the eye. The fairy dog's main feature is its bark. I gave it a bite and a bark as its basic attack, but its mythical bark is a special one that'll mess up the battlefield and make for some funny shenanigans. In the original Irish legends, there's no mention of it flying or having wings, but I just added that for some extra flavor. It's a design choice. It's magical teeth with something mentioned in many stories as well, so if you manage to pray it out, it'll have a few charges of restoration spells. I put up some concept art on my Instagram stories and the Agrippa came out as people's favorite, so I turned it into a miniature. I think it's probably one of the most unique monsters, so I had a lot of fun sculpting this one. It's a controlling monster and can summon cultists. I want to put this creature in an abandoned cloister where it broke out of its chain and has killed all of the monks. The local village is plagued by demons and your party sets out to find where they come from. Cultists have moved into the old cloister and have been using the Agrippa to summon demons. They give the party a hard time before they finally meet the living grimoire. Once defeated, they can use the information it holds to send the demons back to where they came from. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. You can download the stats for the Wavre, Agrippa, and the fairy dog down below, and in the same place you can find a link to my shop where you can buy the 3D miniature I sculpted. Also, if you think you know some folklore story that I don't know about, please nerd out with me in the comments and maybe I'll turn it into a miniature next time.